Grok 4.5 just completed a typical coding task for $2.49, while Fable 5 charged $11.80 for the same job. That's nearly 5 times cheaper, and if you're running hundreds of agent loops a month, that gap is real money. XAI just dropped Grok 4.5 with some big claims, so I'm putting its 5 boldest claims through real-world tests to see which actually hold up. But there's one dimension where the price gap stops mattering entirely, and whether Grok 4.5 survives, it decides if it belongs in your stack. My name is Brian, and I'm in these tools 12 hours a day, so you don't have to be. Every number in this video is traced back to official pricing pages, model cards, and independent benchmarks. Builders running high-volume agentic loops need to know if Grok 4.5's speed and cost claims are real before they commit their pipeline to it. Claim 1, speed and token efficiency. The objection I hear a lot is that speed doesn't matter until your agent loop hits a wall at 3 a.m. and every retry burns tokens and time. Grok 4.5 says it runs at 80 tokens per second and uses 4.2 times fewer output tokens than the competition. So let's see if that's actually real. Grok 4.5 clocks in at 80 TPS, which puts it in genuinely fast model territory. And on comparable coding tasks, it used just 15,954 output tokens versus Opus 4.8's 67,020. That's the 4.2 times figure right there on screen. One thing worth noting, the speed comparison is one-sided, because no competitor published a TPS figure in the same setup, so keep that context in mind. This claim delivers. The token efficiency number came out even more dramatic than advertised. 4.2 times fewer tokens is a real operational difference that shows up on your invoice, not just a marketing slide, and that puts us at one of one claims holding up so far. Claim 2, pricing and costs per task. Every solo dev shipping on a tight budget knows this feeling. You pick a model on the headline price, then the invoice shows up and the per task cost is way higher than you planned. Grok 4.5 lists at $2 per million input tokens and $6 per million output tokens. And the question is whether that translates to real savings on actual coding jobs. What surprised me is how clean the numbers are. A typical coding task costs $2.49 with Grok 4.5. GPT 5.5 runs $5.07 for the same job. And Fable 5 hits $11.80. That's the cost per task comparison right there on screen. One caveat, the 500K context window XAI claims doesn't match the 131K figure noted in other sources, so I couldn't find a verified number for that specific claim. Pricing claim delivers. A gap this wide genuinely caught me off guard. $2.49 versus $11.80 is nearly 5 times cheaper per task, and that's the same number from the hook, so the savings compound fast at any real volume. Grok 4.5 takes the pricing dimension cleanly, and that puts us at 2 of 2 claims holding up. Claim 3, professional judgment on GDP Val Plus. The number that caught my attention is 29%. That's Grok 4.5's mean pass rate on roughly 2,000 Tarish professional workplace reasoning tasks across legal, healthcare, and education. If that number doesn't hold up under scrutiny, the whole value pitch gets a lot thinner, because cheap and fast without real judgment is just cheap and fast. Snorkel's GDP Val Plus benchmark has some pretty striking numbers. Grok 4.5 scores 29% mean pass rate, GPT 5.5 lands at 22%, and Opus 4.8 sits at 21%, with the widest gap showing up in legal at 40%, versus 27 to 28% for competitors, and healthcare at 35% versus 23 to 25%. This is a single benchmark from one lab, so keep that context in mind. Professional judgment claim delivers, and this one genuinely shocked me. Grok 4.5 leading the field on GDP Val Plus at 29% versus 22% for GPT 5.5 is a real margin on reasoning-heavy professional tasks. Not the kind of domain where you'd expect a budget price model to pull ahead. That's 3 of 3 claims holding up so far. Okay, so 3 claims down and the numbers look strong, but we still have agentic coding pipelines and bug catching ahead. And those are the tests where the community has the most skepticism about Grok 4.5. Past Grok models fell apart exactly here. So whether 4.5 holds up in a real agent loop is what decides if the price advantage is worth anything to you. Claim 4, agentic coding pipelines. The day your agent starts hallucinating function calls that don't exist, your pipeline breaks. Your logs fill up with garbage, and you're debugging at midnight instead of shipping. Grok 4.5 claims it's tuned specifically to reduce those hallucinated tool calls in long horizon loops with a 131K context window. So let's see if the benchmark backs that up. On BenchLM, it's basically a dead heat. Grok 4.5 scores 64.7, GPT 5.6, Sol scores 64.6, which is a statistical tie right there on screen. On tool call efficiency, the approaches are different enough that a direct comparison doesn't really work. Grok 4.5 reduces hallucinated calls. Sol uses chain of thought to cut waste, but adds latency. And the cost per loop figures that favor Grok 4.5 are community reported rather than controlled benchmarks. Before we call this one, it's worth being straight about what the data can and can't say. The BenchLM gap is literally 0.1 points, which isn't a real difference. And the tool call comparison is apples and oranges, because the two models take fundamentally different approaches to the same problem. So the cost advantage is real, but your mileage will vary depending on your specific loop structure. Agentic coding is a partial, on raw, benchmark score. It's a tie. The tool call comparison can't be called directly. And the cost per loop edge is real, but not verified, in a controlled setup. So the tally sits at 3 of 4 claims fully holding up, with 1 partially true. A tie against GPT 5.6. Sol, at a fraction of the price, is still a pretty decent place to land. Claim 5, bug catching and non-front-end coding. The objection I've seen all over the forums is that Grok models have always been flashy on benchmarks, but miss the kind of subtle, real-world bugs that actually cost you a production incident. Grok 4.5 claims it catches things other models skip entirely, which is a bold thing to say, and the kind of claim that's really hard to verify at scale. What I found in the community evidence is genuinely interesting. One hands-on reviewer reported Grok 4.5 caught a bug that no other model had ever flagged, including higher-rated ones, and multiple users say it feels better than Composer 2.5 on non-front-end tasks while running fast. The caveat, and it's a real one, these are single reviewer, community-reported observations, not controlled benchmarks, so weight them accordingly. Bug catching claim delivers, with the caveat that the evidence is community-reported. Given Grok's history, this was the claim I figured would fall apart first, and the anecdotal signal is actually pretty strong, because catching a novel bug no other model flagged is a meaningful data point, even if it's not a controlled study. That lands us at 4 of 5 claims holding up, 1 partially true. Alright, so here's where Grok 4.5 genuinely shines. Speed at 80 TPS for high-volume loops, cost at 2.49 per coding task versus $11.80 for Fable 5, token efficiency at 4.2 times fewer output tokens than Opus 4.8, and professional judgment at a 29% mean pass rate on GDP Val Plus against GPT 5.5's 22% and Opus 4.8's 21%. Those are real numbers. Now here's where Grok 4.5 falls short, and I'm not going to soften this. Front-end design is a real weakness, with Opus and Fable models just flat out better for design-heavy work. And on the Intelligence Index, it scores 54, which puts it 4th overall behind Fable 5, GPT 5.5, and Opus 4.8. Past Grok iterations were rough enough that community skepticism about whether 4.5 is a genuine leap is completely fair. So here's the decision rule. Going in, I figured Grok 4.5 would be a minor upgrade on a budget model, and the data came back saying it delivers 4 of 5 claims with 1 tie. Pick it if you run high-volume agentic or coding workflows where cost and speed are the constraint, because 249 per task is the number that matters. Skip it if you need frontier-level front-end design, or the absolute peak of multi-step reasoning. Now, if you want to see how Grok 4.5 stacks up inside an actual coding environment against a direct competitor, my Cursor versus GitHub Copilot video runs both through the same kind of workflow, and the results there are just as interesting. So that one's worth watching before you lock in your setup.